Zirek of the Velari Dominion had never been invited anywhere before, at least not by humans. They were unpredictable, too emotional, too loud, and in far too many recorded reports, too dangerous. But when the Earth ambassador personally requested his presence for what they called a casual hangout, Zirek's curiosity overcame his caution. The phrase itself puzzled him, hang out, a term that sounded both informal and vaguely threatening. Yet the ambassador insisted it would be peaceful, fun, and enlightening, a combination Zirek suspected was physically impossible. The meeting location was a human habitat module stationed at the United Coalition outpost orbiting Delphos 6. Zirek stepped inside and froze. The humans had decorated the room with bright lights, soft furniture, and an aroma that triggered every alert pheromone his species possessed. "Pizza night," shouted a human named Riley, waving a greasy circular food slab like a ceremonial offering. Zirek flinched, unsure whether the object was meant for nourishment or combat. Humans, however, simply laughed, not unkindly, just loudly, always loudly. Riley slung an arm around Zirek's shoulder, an action that in Velari culture symbolized dominance and potential abduction. But Riley did it with cheerful ignorance, tugging him forward. "Relax, buddy, tonight we're just chilling," Riley said. Zirek whispered the word chilling into his translator, which uselessly returned two definitions: cooling due to lowered temperature and feeling mild fear. Zirek experienced both. He was guided to a cushioned seat, strange, soft, suspiciously comfortable. Humans passed food around while exchanging rapid conversation about matters of zero interstellar significance. Sports scores, personal annoyances, jokes with no logical structure whatsoever. Yet Zirek found himself settling into the atmosphere. There was warmth here, literal and emotional. And despite the noise, the strange slang, the overly expressive faces, he sensed no hostility. Only an overwhelming desire to include him. It was baffling, disorienting, yet pleasant. When the humans introduced something called a movie night, Zirek braced for another cultural shock. The lights dimmed, the screen brightened, and the room filled with artificial explosions, heroism, and comedic absurdity. Humans laughed, gasped, cheered, and at some point Riley nudged Zirek and whispered, "Hanging out means being together for no reason other than wanting to." Zirek had no equivalent concept in Velari society. Relationships were transactional, purposeful, arranged. But humans bonded simply by existing near one another. It was inefficient, irrational, and inexplicably powerful. By the time the night ended, Zirek felt something he had never felt before around humans: comfort. As he exited the habitat module, Riley called out, "See you next week, Z." Zirek paused, antennae flicking with cautious wonder. He didn't know what next week would bring. But for the first time, he was looking forward to finding out. The following week began with Zirek preparing extensively for his return to the human gathering. He studied human idioms, food customs, and physical gestures. He even practiced smiling, though his species' attempt resembled a threat display. Still, he intended to do better, whatever better meant in the context of human chaos. When he arrived, the humans greeted him with a cheer loud enough to qualify as an acoustic assault. Riley clapped him on the back, a gesture Zirek had learned meant friendship but delivered violently. Tonight's activity was something humans referred to as game night. Zirek expected training exercises, tactical simulations, or mental challenges worthy of scholars. Instead, the humans presented brightly colored boards, dice, cards, and an alarming amount of competitive enthusiasm. The first game was something called Uno. Zirek learned two things very quickly. The rules themselves were simple, and humans became unreasonably aggressive over simple rules. "Draw 4, shouted a human named Cass, slamming a card so hard the table shook. Riley accused her of war crimes. Cass accused Riley of being a reverse card coward. Zirek watched in confusion as the friendly gathering devolved into playful outrage. Yet beneath the theatrics, he noticed something else. Humans argued with passion, but within minutes, they laughed it off. No resentment, no lingering hostility. It was a kind of social flexibility the Velari envied, but could never replicate. The second game was a holographic cooperative adventure, where the team had to solve puzzles to escape a simulated ancient ruin. Here the humans displayed different strengths. Cass was quick to decipher patterns, Riley excelled at physical coordination, and another human, Juno, improvised wildly creative solutions. Zirek found himself engaged, even excited. For the first time, he felt useful in a human-centered activity. His species, spatial awareness, allowed him to navigate virtual labyrinths with precision. When he successfully led the team through a collapsing corridor, the humans erupted into cheers. Riley swept him up in a hug, startling him so much he emitted a defensive click by accident. The humans only laughed harder. They seemed immune to awkwardness, or maybe they embraced it as part of the experience. After the games ended, the humans lounged casually around the room, talking about their week, their frustrations, their dreams, their failures. This openness unsettled Zirek. Velari shared emotions only when necessary and only in regulated channels. But humans spilled feelings like overturned beverage containers, messy, unpredictable, and oddly refreshing. Riley asked Zirek what he enjoyed doing. The question stunned him. Enjoyment was not a recognized category of activity in Velari culture. Yet after a moment of reflection, he found an answer. I enjoy the sensation of belonging, he admitted, antennae lowering shyly. The room fell momentarily silent, then Riley grinned. Well then, he said, you're in the right place. Zirek left the gathering that night with something warm blooming inside his thorax. Something he later identified as happiness. A week later, Zirek learned a critical truth. Humans absolutely did not understand the concept of a quiet outing. Riley invited him to what was described as a simple walk in nature, an activity that sounded peaceful, meditative, and safe. It was none of those things. The humans took him to a rugged forest zone on Delphos 6, where gravity fluctuated slightly and the local fauna possessed more teeth than necessary. Riley, Cass, and Juno bounded ahead with reckless enthusiasm. Zirek followed with the wary caution of someone expecting an ambush from the very planet itself. Within minutes, Juno pointed excitedly at a creature resembling a floating spine with eyes. Can we pet it? She asked. The question nearly caused Zirek to faint. Fortunately, the creature fled before any human could attempt diplomatic contact through ill-advised touching. The hike became more intense as humans cheerfully scaled uneven terrain, leapt across narrow crevices, and occasionally slipped, laughed, and tried again. Zirek observed them with a mixture of fear and awe. Humans embraced failure as casually as breathing. Mistakes did not shame them, they entertained them. This resilience fascinated him deeply. At one point, Riley challenged Zirek to try climbing a low ridge. Zirek hesitated. Velari bodies were not built for climbing. But Riley stood beside him, offering encouragement. Just one step at a time, we're here if you fall. The phrase meant more to Zirek than Riley knew. No Velari would ever declare such unconditional support. With trembling limbs, Zirek climbed. The humans cheered with each movement. When he reached the top, they erupted in applause loud enough to scare nearby wildlife into early migration. For a moment, Zirek stood there, gazing across the vivid alien landscape. And for the first time in his life, he felt capable of more than his limitations. He felt stronger than he had ever believed himself to be. Later, the group rested beside a small stream. Riley skipped stones, Cass recorded nature footage, and Juno attempted to befriend a fish. Zirek sat among them, soaking in the tranquility. Humans created chaos everywhere they went, but somehow they also created comfort within that chaos. It was a paradox Zirek was only beginning to understand. As they returned to the outpost, Riley nudged him and said, "See, hanging out doesn't have to be indoors." Zirek considered the day, the adventure, the newfound confidence. "Yes," he replied softly, "I believe I am starting to comprehend." But in truth, he knew he had much more to learn. Zirek's growing bond with the humans did not go unnoticed among the Velari Diplomatic Council. His mentor, advisor Lanith, requested a private meeting. Her tone was polite, but her antennae twitched with concern. "You are spending an unusual amount of time with the humans," she said. Zirek nodded cautiously. "They are unpredictable," she continued, "and prone to emotional instability. But they are also kind," he replied, surprising even himself with the firmness of his voice. Lanith frowned, a sign of both skepticism and worry. "You must maintain professional distance," she warned. Zirek left the meeting feeling conflicted. Velari culture valued restraint, formality, and emotional neutrality. Humans were the opposite, and Zirek was beginning to prefer their way more than he wanted to admit. At the next hangout, Zirek arrived unusually quiet. Riley noticed instantly, as humans always did. "What's up, Z?" he asked. Zirek hesitated before explaining the council's concerns. Riley listened thoughtfully, then sighed. "Look, man, if they're worried we're gonna corrupt you, they clearly don't know we can barely manage ourselves." The joke coaxed a small, involuntary trill of amusement from Zirek. Cass, overhearing, joined the conversation. "Your people think we're bad for you?" she asked with mock offense. "No," Zirek clarified, "they believe you are overwhelming." The humans exchanged glances before bursting into laughter. "Yeah, that's fair," Juno admitted. "We overwhelm each other all the time." The group decided to host a more relaxed night for Zirek's sake, but their version of relaxed still involved loud storytelling, competitive cooking, and someone nearly catching a sleeve on fire. Zirek watched the chaos with fond disbelief. Humans tried, genuinely tried, even when they failed spectacularly. And their sincerity mattered more than their precision. Midway through the evening, Riley spoke up. "You don't have to pick a side, you know," he said. "You can appreciate your culture and ours." Zirek considered this. Velari society valued singular allegiance, uniform behavior, and cultural consistency. Humans valued individuality, diversity, and contradiction. Perhaps both perspectives had merit. Perhaps he could belong to more than one world. He returned to the Velari Council the next day with a carefully prepared explanation. He spoke respectfully but honestly. He told them humans were not a threat to his identity, they were expanding it. Some council members remained skeptical, but others showed curiosity. It was a small shift, but meaningful. Zirek realized then that hanging out with humans was not just changing him. It might be changing the Velari too. Several weeks after Zirek began his unconventional social experiment, Riley approached him with an exciting announcement. "We are hosting a multi-species cookout," he said proudly. "You're helping." Zirek had no idea what a cookout was, but he suspected it involved danger, smoke, and loud noises. He was correct. Humans dragged equipment onto a communal deck. Grills, ovens, tables, music systems, and decorations that made no logical sense but somehow brightened the atmosphere. Aliens from several species attended, drawn by curiosity, diplomacy, or the irresistible scent of human food. Zirek found himself getting Velari visitors, explaining human behaviors with surprising expertise. Yes, that shouting is normal. No, they are not fighting. Yes, the food is supposed to look like that. No, touching the fire is never advised. The humans introduced games, dances, and collaborative cooking challenges. At one point, Riley convinced beings from 5 different species to participate in a synchronized dance that had no choreography whatsoever. Chaos erupted, limbs flailed, tentacles intertwined, someone fell, someone else cheered, and Zirek laughed harder than he ever had in his life. The sound startled nearby Velari, who had never heard him reach such volume. Later, as the twin suns of Delphos 6 dipped below the horizon, the group gathered to watch the sky shift into hues of violet and silver. Riley sat beside Zirek, nudging him gently. "See, hanging out isn't just about doing stuff," he said. "It's about being with people who make you feel like you belong." Zirek gazed at the humans, messy, loud, chaotic, endlessly emotional, and felt an indescribable warmth. He thought back to his first hesitant visit, his confusion, his fear, and the slow, steady unraveling of every assumption he'd ever held. He had grown, changed, adapted, not because he abandoned his culture, but because he expanded his capacity to understand others. As music played softly through the cool evening air, Zirek realized something profound. Hanging out with the humans had not just taught him new customs. It had taught him connection, courage, vulnerability, and joy. It had taught him what it meant to feel seen, welcomed, and valued. He turned to Riley and said, with quiet sincerity, "I am grateful." Riley grinned, throwing an arm around him. "Anytime, Z," he replied, "that's what friends are for." And under the shimmering, alien sky, surrounded by strange beings united in laughter, Zirek knew without question. He belonged here, not because he was human, but because the humans had made room for him anyway.